Start. Good morning, dear friends. Thank you for joining us. Today is Monday, Memorial Day, May 31st, and it is the 20th of Sivan. We are presently studying the entire Talmud, one page at a time. We are on Nun Gimel Amud Beis, that's 53B. Today's Memorial Day, and so we started off with a question about how we view Memorial Day. Is it a Chageh, which is a Jewish reference to a religious non-Jewish holiday? And I don't believe that to be the case. I think that American Jews, or probably Jews around the globe, we are grateful for the freedoms that America presented and presents. And I think it would be fair to say that notwithstanding all of the alarming headlines and things going on, America remains probably the best place for a Jew to be since the beginning of existence. Since Matan Torah, a Jew probably was not safer anywhere in the world than in the United States in 2021. Again, notwithstanding alarming news and everyone hears divergent political perspectives, ultimately that freedom, the comfort, security that we feel is very much thanks to the sacrifice of those who gave their lives to defend America and to defend America's values. And the Rebbe would refer to America as a Malchus Shel Chesed. Not only the Rebbe and other Gedolim would refer to America as a Malchus Shel Chesed, a kingdom, if you will, a nation that's kindness, and it's kindness to the Jewish people. After the war and on and on and on, including what America does for Eretz Yisrael. And so I think it's appropriate to at least mark it. And for that reason, we're going to dedicate today's learning to all those servicemen and women who died in the protection of the freedom we have to study Gemara and to say whatever mishigas we want about Judaism and otherwise. And we shouldn't take that gift for granted. And if we study a little bit of Jewish history or world history, we won't take it for granted. And so it's their sacrifice that America commemorates, and therefore it's only appropriate for us to honor and dedicate today's learning. And Hashem should protect America and Klal Yisrael in every sense. And Beryl, thank you for triggering that thought process.
I think what's desperately needed, whether it's a Memorial Day or our own people, is education of the youth to appreciate what was done to get to where they are.
Indeed, that is certainly so, and that's that. It's true. We don't think we can never. When we have something that's so easy and obvious, it's hard to appreciate what it would be not to have it and to appreciate that gift. And that's about so many things that we have in this world. We talk in the Gemara and we study and contrast what life was like in the time of the Mishnah, the time of the Gemara, and the time today. And we talk about yesterday. We spoke about walking your dog and picking up after it, and we can't even imagine a world that was different. And yet, it wasn't always like this. And so we have to have gratitude. And listen, if you enjoy a good barbecue, or you like to go to the Hamptons, or commemorate the beginning of your summer, La Briut, it's also a wonderful thing. In New York, Memorial Day is not just Memorial Day; it's the beginning of. I understand correctly, and I don't know firsthand, but I understand dress codes change, and addresses change, and so much happens on this auspicious weekend. So, but we'll learn Gemara, and that's beautiful because the one thing that's constant is the Torah that we take with us. And so let us begin without delay. But we're going to begin by picking up what we briefly, our discussion yesterday, which our discussion yesterday broadly is about this stuff. Well, we quoted a Tosefta, I believe it was a Tosefta, Brisa, that was coming to add to our conversation about items, gear, that an animal may and may not wear on Shabbos. And we quoted a whole list of items that may not be worn on Shabbos, and a smaller list of items for healing that an animal may wear. And we were a little bit confused because the one item that an animal may not wear was a kameya, an amulet, which we discussed yesterday was known to the state of California, or it was known to the folks then to work, and it was considered, halacha considered it an effective healing. And yet we find that for a human being, such a kameya may be worn if it's been tried and proven with 3 effective healings. But for an animal, that is not the case, which led the Gemara to ask an interesting question. What is the difference between a human and an animal as it pertains to kameya? You might have expected the Gemara to go into some schmooze about the value of humans versus animals, but that's not what the Gemara does. The Gemara instead notes that there are differences in how you heal an animal and how you heal a human. And I think we can agree, we have some people in the medical world, and there are certainly parts of healing that are very similar between human beings and animals. And there are other parts of healing that are very much not alike for the healing of humans versus animals. And the Gemara makes the comment that there's a special, for healing, there's a mazel that heals. And of course, Jews, we know the word mazel. It's one of the most Jewish words around. And we sing Siman Tov Mazel Tov every time that we have the chance. And sometimes even if it's not appropriate, we still want to sneak in a Siman Tov Mazel Tov because that's how we are. We always want to celebrate. And so what is a mazel? And that question is not a new question. It wasn't just a question that we wonder. It's a question that is very much brought up by this Gemara. What is mazel? And so we took a look at Rashi, and Rashi gave us a definition for mazel. Rashi told us that a mazel is a kind of guardian angel. Hamalach shalosh hu melitz alav, the angel, the person's angel that looks after him. And that is the definition or an understanding of mazel. Elsewhere, when the Gemara discusses the idea of a mazel in the context of healing, it describes that there are certain angels that administer and heal from illness. Elsewhere, this is my conjecture, but based on a very glance, it seems like other texts make an answer that's going to make our doctors here and our people in the mental health professional, I think, at least appreciate. Can anyone contemplate another distinction between an animal and a human when it comes to wearing an amulet that you're very certain is going to work and heal you? Anyone want to take a guess? What?
Kavana.
Well, almost kavana, but I would say there's a psychological component here. The placebo effect. If you know that something's going to heal you, it's going to give you the optimism and the confidence, the hope, expectation. And that sometimes when a person is hopeful and thinks that something will heal them, sometimes it puts the person psychologically it triggers, again, I don't know anything about the medicine, but it triggers a person to potentially allow themselves to heal or to put them in a mind frame that will be productive for healing. And so, again, not Rashi over here, but Rashi elsewhere in the Gemara appears to say that this is a psychological tool. If a person has a kameya, they believe the kameya is going to help. It's good for their mazel. It's good for their sense of optimism. An animal, to our knowledge, and again, Alan, you'll have to correct me because you've so far proven to be our greatest authority on animals. Animals are aware, but they might not be aware of the fact that the kameya they're wearing is proven to be effective or not. And so maybe the animal will not have the psychological benefit of a kameya, and therefore we're not going to just let an animal wear a kameya. This may be a little bit blasphemous, or this may be a little bit of a different perspective, but I think it might give us something to sink our teeth into that is a little less esoteric and metaphysical and a little bit more in the psychological arena. And I think some of our friends might appreciate this possible explanation. And I'm actually taking this in the back of my Mesifta Gemara. It suggests, he doesn't give this explanation, but he quotes this text, and I believe that's what it's saying. Doctor, are you comfortable signing off on this pshat, or?
Yeah. I could think of a lot of things going on. What's going on in my mind right now, which is that you are doing a wonderful thing by putting mezuzahs on the doorposts of people who never had them, and most people who are not very well educated think that it gives them mazel, right? Something good, some good luck. So the question is, does it really matter if there's a cloth inside or not? So I'm just thinking about.
Well, as a rabbi, I believe that.
Right, but I'm just saying, for real. I mean, that in terms of not the knowledge with the amulet, the same kind of an issue.
So you're actually making a very, very wise comment. There's a question. So let's say the Rambam, who's anti-amulet, I believe.
Right.
What would he say about a mezuzah? So he actually is very clearly opposed to people viewing a mezuzah as an amulet. A mezuzah we do because it is a mitzvah. Hashem told us to put up a mezuzah. So a Jew puts up Hashem says the Jew does. Certain mitzvahs have certain benefits, but that's, again, in the ideal approach, secondary. Now, my present selling point is that a mezuzah is a way to be visibly Jewish. And at a time where there are people that are afraid to be visibly Jewish, I believe it is my correct role to encourage people to be comfortable and confident being visibly Jewish. And I'll tell you the truth, in Hallandale and Hollywood Beach in 2021, where there are probably more mezuzahs than not, it's not like taking a very big gamble. I'm fairly confident that it's the right thing. And you know what, Baruch Hashem, it's gotten a lot of nice reaction, both to people. I have a whole list that I need to go down now to help facilitate the mezuzahs. And of course, this is only insider information, but I certainly would not be opposed to having a deeper connection or an enduring connection with our recipients of the mezuzah. So if they would like to learn more or be more connected, I'm certainly not going to stop with the mezuzah. But I believe it's the right thing and it's a good thing. And Yasher Koach, doctor, for allowing me to toot this horn and to again ask if anyone has a neighbor that could use the mezuzah. I'll be grateful and happy to get it to them to continue to promote Jewish visibility. And now, with that being said, actually, I have to add one more thing. I told you with conjecture that it was about psychology. It appears that the Meiri says this explicitly. I'm going to read you his words just so that you understand that I made it up, but now I have a very good authority that agrees with me. Mitoich bitchono shel adam. Because the person has bitachon, confidence, certainty. Ala kameya, that this kameya is an effective kameya, it'll channel Hashem's blessings, or whatever exactly the nuance of the kameya is. Mischazek or misrapa. He strengthens himself and he allows himself to be healed. And without saying the word psychologically or psychology, I believe that we're talking about a person that feels optimistic, upbeat, and certain that they'll be able to be healed. This will work. So if anybody asks if there's a discussion about the placebo effect in the Talmud, well, I'm sure there are other places in the Talmud, but you could send them to this theory, and it's certainly something that's to be considered. And an animal, again, I hope I'm not insulting any animal lovers, but I'm not certain that an animal has the same benefit from the placebo effect of a kameya. So that was just to finish up or to continue yesterday's discussion. Now we're sharing the screen, and we're ready to continue.
What's a kameya?
A kameya is an amulet.
Amulet.
Okay.
And in the ancient world, even more than today, although it certainly exists today, as Roberto told us, there was a whole industry. Yeah, I'm not putting down kameyas. There's a whole industry of using different Kabbalistic formulas or other kinds of formulas to channel Hashem's bracha, to feel close to Hashem, possibly to call upon.
I would just correct you. Don't say the modern world. You're talking about North America. You go to Africa and the tribes, it's as rampant as ever.
Well, more than that, kameya is also a Jewish thing. I don't want to give the impression that a kameya is a non-Jewish thing. Jewish people and great tzaddikim have been giving out, using kameyas, particularly on the Kabbalistic side. The less Kabbalistically inclined are likely going to be less into kameyas.
My guess is the Ethiopian Jews would be very active in that area off the top of my head.
Yes, but let me ask you this. How do you think a Yemenite Jew would feel about a kameya?
No, I don't.
No,
No, I just don't think we should feel too superior when we say the modern world.
Beryl, I wasn't indicating that there's anything wrong with believing in a kameya or using a kameya. I was just saying that a world that's more spiritual is likely to place more value in something that's about channeling spiritual energy, and so a world that's a little less into that kind of thing. Now, I'm actually searching my phone now.
The one difference between kameyas and non-Jewish world, the non-Jewish world actually worships those tzaskas, whatever you want to call them, that they have.
Yeah, now I got to share before we continue. And again, Well, two things. First of all, someone reached out to me yesterday. They wanted to listen to the shir, and I sent them a recording. And they were very gracious. A friend, and he told me, I really enjoyed the shir. And he told me something else. He gave a beautiful compliment to those who attend the shir. He says, I go to a lot of shiurim, and many times the folks at the shir ask questions that don't contribute; they actually distract. And he said, this year I was listening to the questions, and I was thinking, wow, I'm so happy that the attendees are interacting in such a way because they have such thoughtful and informative questions. So he gave a compliment to our Chaburi here. And I said, of course, I know this, but he didn't know it. So that was nice. And then he told me, I think I'm going to try to help you. I want to hire someone that will properly upload and catalog the shiurim to put them on YouTube so that you can make it more accessible, because he said he wants to listen to the rest of them. Now, what you're looking here on the screen is something that's not necessarily a conventional kameya, but it's in the same genre. This is allegedly a kameya that was written on the inside of a pocket watch. If you look closely, you can see this is like a pocket watch kind of cover. I think they took out the watch and they wrote in here some words. Don't say them out loud because these are Hashem's name. That's Shin Daled Yud. That's Shakai, Hashem's name, right? That we have on mezuzah. And then it says some other lines, Chava Rishona Adam Chava Chutz Lilis, or something to that effect. And then there's Kabbalistic names over here. And this is actually an amulet that was allegedly from some great Hasidic Kabbalist in the pre-war world. I don't own this, by the way. Don't get excited, but I do have a picture of it because there is a gentleman or a family who inherited a big collection of Judaica from their neighbor. And in that collection, a lot of it is considered to be Baba Mises by professional collectors and museums and libraries that looked at it, because they have a lot of like Kiddush cups with names carved on it that go back to every Hasidic celebrity the last 300 years, and is considered not to be authentic. But this, I believe, may be at least authentic in the fact that it is a type of amulet or kameya which employs Kabbalistic names, shemot, and references to protection, Adam and Eve, because so anyways, there's a little show and tell before we get started. And allegedly, this is an item that was actually people are interested in. They say that Rebbitzin, and again, I only know this from them, so it very well could not be true, but Rebbitzin Esther Jungreis, who passed away not long ago, one of the great Rebbitzins involved in Kiruv and teaching, I believe in Queens primarily, but across New York and the globe, really. Her husband, who was Rabbi Jungreis, who passed away a good few years before him, when he was very ill, the family claims that they actually borrowed this to allow him to hold, or I don't know. So they claim that it has some kind of value, at least to that great rabbinic family. So that's enough of the show and tell. Now let's go back to the Gemara, and thank you for indulging. Hold on. Any final comments before we jump into our next Gemara?
Comment that man made on the class and the
I'm
people
sorry?
in the class. The comment that person made about
Yes.
the quality of the people in this class.
Mm-hmm.
I think you should put that on our certificates.
I think we certainly should, or maybe we'll put it on the advertisement for this year. Well, next to the L'chaim Farm sponsorship, we'll put what people say about.
I actually think, Rabbi, that you should have told him honestly that when Shtisel is not being filmed, these guys come and they devote their time to keep practicing on being able to appear and entertain people. I would have told him that.
All right, let's engage in our Kameya discussion. This is again here. So the Gemara here distinguishes there is a difference between a behema and an adam, a man and an animal. Behema lesle mazala, the animal doesn't have mazel, and the human being does have a mazel, and therefore the kameya, you can't use a kameya that works for a human doesn't necessarily work for an animal. By the way, this doesn't work for all of the commentaries we've seen, because there are those commentaries that said that this was a kameya that was proven for a person, right? That was the Gemara's discussion. Okay, let's see. If it is so that We're talking about an amulet. Oh, I do have to correct myself in one small regards. The explanation that I gave about the psychology of animal psychology and human psychology, there's a reason why Rashi doesn't give that here in the Gemara. And the answer is because our Gemara referenced kameyas that do work for animals, kameyas that don't work for animals. And the inference at this point is that a kameya, an amulet, that was proven on a person wouldn't work on an animal, but a kameya that was proven on an animal should work for an animal. So certainly the easy, simple reading of the Gemara does not embrace my explanation of Mazel and psychology. I wanted to share that with you because I thought you'd find that interesting. Ultimately, there is some kind of spiritual or, not physical sense of its effectiveness. Now the Gemara continues. Ihachi, if it is so, if what is so, if we're truly describing at this point in our thought process that there's a kameya that was proven on a human, doesn't necessarily work for an animal, well then the text itself is a problem. Why do we say in this very same Tosefta that this is a stringency of animals over humans? What was that? We said that animals can't wear a kameya and the human can wear a kameya. Well, if you're telling me now that we only meant human kameyas don't work on animal kameyas, so then that would not be a way that animals are more limited, restrictive than humans. And so therefore, this would temporarily force us to now reconsider if we're talking about a human kameya on an animal. And so the Gemara rejects this attempt to reframe the issue of the kameya. Again, just to clarify again. At this point, the Gemara wants to say that human kameyas that are proven are acceptable. An animal kameya that is proven is acceptable. But just because a human kameya was tried on a human, it doesn't mean it would work for an animal.
Rabbi.
Yeah. Hold on one second. The Gemara now says that doesn't make sense because this would not be a stringency of humans over animals. It would just be a distinction. It would be like saying, if you have a bacterial infection, antibiotics work. If you have a viral infection, I don't know, take whatever viral, or maybe there isn't, take a medicine. So is it saying that one works better than the other? No, each one works for their malady, for their situation. So the same thing, an animal kameya not being allowed to be worn by a human or vice versa is not a stringency. It's just saying you got to use a targeted kameya. And then the line, wouldn't work. This is a stringency of animals over humans. I would have expected them to re-explain our understanding of kameya, but the Gemara instead tells us we got to reread the Mishnah. Reb Beryl, please go ahead.
No, I see this differently. I don't see an animal kameya the way you see it. The animal is wearing a kameya really for its owner. Let's say you have a sick cow. The guy's hoping that the cow gets better, that the cow has litter, gives milk, whatever. So the animal is not wearing the kameya hoping it's going to cure it.
The Gemara is operating, the way I see it, the Gemara is operating under the assumption that a kameya is actually going to cause healing. I thought that the psychological effect or the placebo effect actually helping a person heal was something very interesting, so I wanted to share with you. But I don't think we would allow a person to put something on their animal just because it made him feel good. It has to have a proven medical value. That's what I believe is shop. But it is interesting to consider that this could be further about the comfort of the owner. I don't believe that is the explanation in this Gemara. But I may be.
I also have a question about this, and I wonder how we should understand that the amulet proved to be effective. That is, for our modern mind, it means that we had some testing, some experiments, changing conditions, making observations, but it doesn't look like the rabbis really wanted to do that.
So
is that they felt that the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter is free, although it was very easy to establish that it's not entirely free. So they were satisfied with this approximation.
Yes.
Now, when we talk about effective amulet, did they have the same understanding of effectiveness as we do? Or was it somewhat different?
So, Professor,
This doesn't really describe anything about this.
I'm glad that you're asking this. I mentioned it yesterday, but I just said it in passing. I think, but I'm glad you asked because we need to clarify. The Talmud and Halacha the Mishnah had a formula for considering if an amulet worked, and it was very different than the scientific process that scientists would use today. Their formula was, if the amulet healed 3 individuals, it achieved chazaka, it achieved the presumption that it was effective, and that was considered enough to call it a tested or tried amulet. Now,
how did they know that it was the amulet who healed the?
So that's a good question, and that's why maybe as a scientist you might have a more rigorous process to find out if the amulet actually healed. But that is they call it, what was the word? We read it yesterday. A kameya mumcha. Kameya mumcha. I mean, Professor, I might give you an answer that's kind of tragic, which is that in those days, people didn't usually make it through illnesses that were probably very simple for us to heal. So if a person was healed from an illness that people never or typically didn't recover from, it was considered miraculous. I said, "Oh wow!" Again, I'm just making up, so it's not like I'm taking this from somewhere with a great. But perhaps that was why they felt more comfortable saying if miraculously a person overcame the odds and was healed, they were fairly confident that it was the amulet. I'm not suggesting it is or isn't. I'm just telling you that was their formula for considering if an amulet was considered a mumcha or not mumcha. Now, I am the one that used the word tested. So the word mumcha doesn't mean tested. It means an expert or effective amulet. I added the word tested because it had to go through three effective. It had to heal 3 times. But again, certainly the scientific process that we would use today to determine if a medication or a therapy is effective would probably be a little more exhaustive. In those days, it's not so much. I understood your question. Your question was, were they aware of the limitation of such a process? I think they probably were. But if they were going to try, if they were going to try to use the scientific method and do studies the way we do today, there would be no therapy because of the way the world was and the limit of access and the like. So I think they did the best with what worked then.
Maybe they just went by observation. One person said, this amulet was worn and the cow had calves and they're all healthy. Maybe just by observation.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, except for these are healing. These are remedy. These are kameyas that are used for in lieu of our doctors. They would use the kameya.
I think the best thing to do in that case is forget about the amulet. Take a chumash and put it on your chest and keep it on for all the time.
Let me just make a very important disclaimer right now. This class, presently nor in the future on recording, should never be used in place of expert medical advice. If you have an emergency, please hang up and dial 911.
No, so, I can tell you, Professor, from personal experience, being a pharmacist, I don't believe in a lot of these secondary methods, whatever you want to call them. And then when I had pain and it didn't go away, I went to everything available, naturopath, acupuncture, anything available. I would have, lit a candle if somebody told me it would help.
Rebel, it's a good thing you're retired or we could get you fired.
The first question somebody would ask is, it was effective 3 times out of how many tries?
What was left on the editor's floor?
You're asking you're asking a very good question. I haven't read up more than that recently, so I believe it means 3 consecutively effective. But you know what? No, but it is interesting and certainly a topic worthy of exploration. I'm sure there are articles written on it, and I'm sure there are studies contrasting it with other kinds of healings in the ancient world. Very interesting. But let's just for a moment, let's go back to the Gemaras. I'm afraid now we're gonna have people listening to the recording, and the second one they listen to will be like, but I think this is interesting. I enjoy it, so I want to thank everybody for.
I think modern advertising, if I may, used to be so unsophisticated that I remember the classic one was that 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Pepsodent, okay, or whatever. And forget about they were actors and looking like dentists, but they never asked 4 out of 5. You take, I can tell you, 4 out of 5 people who live in Florida go to the Chabad on the ocean.
So 4 out of 5 meant there are plenty of people that actually like this.
So
all right.
People like to, it's
yeah, exaggerate. All right, so the Gemara then says, hold on. If we're talking about using a human amulet, a human therapy for an animal, or the prohibition of an animal carrying a human therapy, that would not be a stringency. That wouldn't mean that we are more strict and restrictive to animals than humans. It would just mean that we demand the same criteria. Humans should use human therapy, and animals should use animal therapies, or remedies, I should say. So the Gemara now is forced to revisit that last line. We read it. When I read it together with you, that text yesterday, I understood it to be saying that the Chumrah was that we allow humans to have amulets and we don't allow animals to have amulets. The Gemara is now going to revisit this. I want to read Rashi here with you. If it is so, that we allow animals to wear tried and proven animal amulets by what does it mean that this was a stringency? A man also, a human is also only allowed to wear a human remedy. So the Gemara says, no, let's reread that text. Mi sabris akameya kai. Is this line a reference to kameya? Asandal kai. This is a reference to footwear. Now I'm going to zoom back. Please hold on. If you're susceptible to vertigo or seizures, please look away. Let's go back to this text. Here, let me read you again. The animal shouldn't wear a kameya, even though it is expert. And this is the stringency of animals over people. So the obvious and instinctive reading is that this last line is referring to the line prior. Our Gemara is now saying no. Maybe they had a different version of the Tosefta. Maybe the Tosefta had the low behema besandal, the hippie, what we call the hippie sandal. Maybe was that what it's called? Or something. Anyways, the animal footwear. That's what it means that it's a chaymer with the animal and a person. Let's think about it. Human beings are allowed to wear footwear. Animals are not. So that is indeed a chaymer, a chumrah, a stringency applied to animals that does not apply to humans. Humans can wear shoes. Animals may not wear shoes. And indeed, Rashi says, an animal can't have footwear. And again, we clarified yesterday at length, this is not talking about horseshoes. This is talking about what animals would wear on their feet prior to horseshoes, which was hippo something. What do we call it? Was it hippo sandals? I don't remember the name of it now. All right, anyways. And now we understand that the Mishnah is actually talking about the stringency of an animal that it can't wear shoes, even though a human can. And I think the assumption is that if a human being's shoe falls off, they'll put it right back on. But if an animal's shoe falls off, it might be more complicated to put back on, and the owner will end up carrying it. The Gemara is now going to ask a question from a text. And let's read Rabbi Steinsaltz's intro with regards to whether or to what extent the tsar of an animal is considered on Shabbos. Let's have a discussion. Let's talk about how much and when and where the Gemara is concerned for animal discomfort. Obviously, the Gemara would never want to promote animal discomfort. That's out of the question.
Late last night.
Tsar Bali Chaim is a very important value. However, there is a difference between a Jew being prohibited from inflicting pain and to what extent a Jew would be permitted to alleviate discomfort on Shabbos. And so that's going to be our discussion. We're harking back to a while ago to the previous page where Rav and Shmuel and Rav Yochanan all permitted the animal to wear Alan, what was it called? A saddle what?
Blanket.
A saddle blanket. And we said then it's because of the animal's discomfort. So now the Gemara is going to ask regarding this subject. Tashema. Sachin umefar chisin la'adam. On Shabbos, one may administer oil to a wound to help smooth down or heal or scrape off a scab, says Rabbi Steinsaltz. And that's what Rashi says too. Believe the hamaka, when a person may wash off or clean off rub off a scab. Today, I don't think medical advice would be to remove scabs. I think you should let them stay on and heal. But I may be correct. But anyways, this very treatment that was applied to a person may not be done for an animal. So here we see an instance where obviously we don't want a person to be in terrible pain. Ostensibly, the same treatment would alleviate pain for the animal, and yet we do not let the animal have treatment. Excuse me. My love, are we not saying the ikamaka mishum sar? The animal was injured, and because of pain, we are yet not. I'm sorry, my love, the ikamaka mishum sar. Isn't this talking about that for the person there is discomfort, and therefore it's allowed to be done? And for the animal, it can't be done. Rashi, mishum sar. Even though there's discomfort, we're still not allowing the animal to have alleviate its pain. And this would be an effective challenge, says Rashi, to the opinions of Rav and Shmuel. They argued very vigorously about a feed bag, but they did not argue about a saddle blanket that is permissible. And this text seems to indicate that we don't care about an animal's discomfort. The Gemara says, no. You got to understand. What's happening over here is, let's see the rabbi. The Gamar Maka, the wound is already healed. Umishum Tanog, and what's happening here is not going to get rid of discomfort. It was a kind of manicure. It was some kind of pleasurable experience. Let's read Rashi. Loi de Gamar Maka, Shnesrapa Hamaka. The wound is already healed. V'sicho pirchos mishum tainug. Why would you put oil and why would you scrape it? This would be pleasurable. Ulerav vadai kasha. This would still be a challenge to Rav. Why? Because Rav says that even for just pleasure, to make the animal feel maximum comfort, you're also allowed to possibly allow an animal to have certain experiences. Interesting. This actually is hold on one second. This text initially sounded like a challenge to Rav and Shmuel. At the end of the day, however, it was not a challenge to Rav and Shmuel. It is only a challenge to Rav. Rav says that you're allowed to care even about an animal's pleasure. You're allowed to give an animal a massage. He doesn't say that, but you're allowed to provide tainug for the animal. And so Rashi makes a very fascinating point here. Rashi says, do you know that this text is a problem to Rav? Rav is being argued upon, if you will, by a brisa. But Rashi makes a very important note, which I don't know if we've ever discussed over here. Who was Rav's teacher? I think it was Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. Is that true? And being that he was part of the era of the Mishnah, we frequently see that Rav Tana Upalig. Rav was a transitional figure who was considered both part of the Tanaic period and the Amorite period. He is like the final member of the Talmud class, the Mishnah class, and the first member of the Gemara class. Typically, and we discussed this recently, an authority of the Talmud is not allowed to disagree or take a different position than the Mishnaic authority, the Mishnaic sages. The one or the primary exception is Rav Tana Upalig. Rav is also considered a Tana. He was part of the era of the Mishnah, and therefore he is entirely capable of having an independent position, independent of another Mishnah or Brisa. Whereas Shmuel, although Shmuel was Rav's associate, and frequent debate partner, and occasionally the Gemara will actually take the position of Shmuel over Rav. But what Shmuel is not authorized to do, because he is junior and did not have that same experience, Shmuel is not able to disagree and argue with a Mishnah. Very important line, very important comment, and very interesting. It also creates new questions, which I think we might skip over at this point because it's not necessary for the essential understanding of the Gemara. Any comments or questions before we move on to the next section?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
Getting back to the amulet. If a farmer has, let's take a horse that's very sick and it's dying,
Okay.
and he's tried all kinds of remedies, and he puts an amulet on the horse, and he's thinking, nothing else is helping. Please, maybe this will work. Isn't that like praying to an idol?
Are you praying to the amulet?
Yeah, he's praying to the amulet.
By the way, Alan, I appreciate your question. I think you're taking an important position. I think you asked a similar question at the end of yesterday's shir because it really bothers you. You're asking, how is an amulet not avodah zarah? So I'm going to ask you, in what way is an amulet like avodah zarah? Why isn't the hope that an experimental medical treatment also like avodah zarah? All hope is lost, and you're hoping this is going to work. I could answer for you, but I want to hear your words. I want to hear how you'll explain it.
I would use medications. We know medications work.
Spoken like a farmer.
Well, a kameya is known to the state of California. I keep on picking on California because you ever notice that California has its own set of scientific facts. Have you ever noticed that? So it was understood then to be effective or potentially effective, and so I'm not saying that a kameya works or doesn't work, and I'm not telling you how a kameya works. I'm telling you that in that world, the person's willingness to try a kameya may have been synonymous to us trying what's it called? Alternative remedies when all other remedies run out. I'm not telling you it's a good idea or not, but it's not avodah zarah. You're not asking a foreign, another God or another independent force of God to heal you.
No, you're injecting something or giving somebody something that could help.
Right.
But an amulet is just a piece of metal.
Alan, I could foresee a situation where somebody puts an amulet on a horse and says to the Hashem, please, Hashem, let this amulet help my horse.
Yeah.
Alan, the best example I could think of to deal with your issue is hypnosis. What do you think of hypnosis?
I don't remember.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, why would people, but
it's a treatment. It's a treatment. It's a treatment directly to the body.
It's a treatment. Okay, but it's not avodah zarah, is it?
No.
No. Okay, so why is an amulet really any different?
You might as well take a cross and put it on the.
Oh, what you're saying is like this. There's some objects that are problematic, so all objects should be problematic. No, a cross that represents a belief in some kind of non-Jewish belief that there's some kind of Trinity, God forbid, or whatever, that's a problem.
This is a belief too. Hold
on. And is belief in alternative therapy also a belief? It's the difference between believing something will help and believing in that there's another God or there's another force of nature that's outside of God. The word we're using the same English word, belief, or it says lo taturu achari lo yilachel lokim acherim. You should not have other gods. So you shouldn't have alternative gods. So is alternative medicine? It's not the word alternative in it. Now I could make your case, but I don't think in the present moment. I don't think an alternative remedy that doesn't appear to work because in your scientific mind, and you're not wrong from a pharmacist's perspective or a doctor's perspective, to do a kameya would be a very unscientific and non-pharmacy thing to do. And I'm not even sure I would tell you to do a kameya for that matter. But our question isn't the effectiveness of kameya. And by the way, we could probably do a whole series on this because there are many different nuanced opinions. And I'll add you more things to ask along the same lines that are actually really good, compelling questions. But for the purpose of our conversation, a kameya is not saying, oh, if God's not helping me, maybe there's another force of nature that's going to help me. Or if God's not helping me, maybe I should appeal to this God. No. A kameya notwithstanding the complexity of what exactly and how exactly a kameh works, it's an attempt to connect to Hashem and to appeal to Hashem. It's a prayerful thing. It's not an alternative solution, and it's not giving a physical embodiment to God. I know that's probably what your question is. Isn't a kameh no? A kameh is a scroll that says different things.
So,
No,
Rabbi,
but you hit it right on the nose. You're saying that if God won't help me, I'm going to go to this.
No,
We're
we're saying maybe Hashem wants me to try this. Maybe Hashem wants me to up my spiritual game too.
So
Maybe
Rabbi, in English we say the first rule when you're in a hole is stop digging, but I'm going to ignore it. You know, when Yehoshua Leibovich, the great scholar, heard that people were putting notes into the wall that Tel Aviv should beat Herzliya in soccer, he said that's avodah zorah. So it's a question of what you do and what mind frame you bring to the issue.
Right. Yep. So again, is it possible for a kameh to somehow is it possible for a person to engage in having an amulet and it actually would be a wrong-headed or avodah zarah type of thought? Yeah, sure. If your kameh is appealing to other gods or other forces that are outside of Hashem, then that could be avodah zarah. But it's not inherently a problem. It's not inherently a concern. For the same price, I once checked somebody's mezuzahs. I know this is totally off topic, but I once checked somebody's mezuzahs. They were having some problems, and their rabbi up north told them they should consider getting their mezuzahs checked. And so they called me. I took the mezuzahs down, and all the mezuzahs, which I think were from a previous owner or they got from a friend from Israel, all had writings about Yashka, Christianity, in Hebrew and in English with crosses. These weren't mezuzahs at all. These were some kind of, missionary, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't even nefarious. Maybe they were trying to make some money. They had a gift shop, in the old city. Not every gift shop is going to sell you a kosher mezuzah. But it was a horrifying thing. So again, they weren't doing anything intentional. It's good we got them the mezuzahs. But that mezuzah was, in a sense, an expression of avodah zarah. But God forbid to say that a mezuzah is the problem. These mezuzahs, faulty mezuzahs, were the problem. So can a kameya call upon problematic things? Yes. I'll take it a step further. There is actually a very famous historic event where kameyas were the center of the fight. And this is a famous fight, a famous debate in the city of Ahu, which was the famous three cities, Altona, how does it go? Altona, Hamburg, and I don't know. So three German towns, and there was a big fight between Rabbi Yaakov Emden and Rabbi Yonasan Eibschitz. Rabbi Yonasan Eibschitz was the chief rabbi, I think, of Altona or Hamburg, and he was accused. He was a Kabbalist, and he provided kameyas. No one had a problem with kameyas, but they had a problem with his kameyas because they opened them up, and allegedly he was referencing Shabbat Ch. Allegedly, and there's a lot of scholarship on this particular saga, a lot of interesting literature on it. It's one of the most famous communal crises of all time in the Ashkenazic world. And suffice it to say, the challenge wasn't, hey, how dare you have a kameh? The challenge was we opened your kamehs and there was problematic stuff inside of it. And he was accused of being a hidden follower of Shabtai Tzvi. Shabtai Tzvi, of course, was a famous false messiah who converted to Islam when the going got tough. And one of the greatest, most demoralizing events that happened in Jewish history since the time of the golden calf. But anyways, there's a lot on so again, Alan, to your point, could a kameya be a problem? Yes. Are there opinions that might find kameyas generally not advisable? Yes. Is it avodah zarah? Respectfully, I don't believe so. We could continue more of this, but I want to at least give another few lines of Gemara before our listeners accuse us of false advertising that we're a Gemara shir.
And hypnosis is a form of a treatment. This isn't a treatment.
You don't think it's a treatment, but someone does. Tashema. The Kabbalist, and look, it's certainly parnasa for the Kabbalist. He's writing it, so it's got to be worth something. Now, Tashema, I'm sorry. Tashema, let's talk some more about the comfort of animals. Behema shachzadam, an animal that's suffering from an padura, which Tell me what screen you see now. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
A new screen, I'm saying.
I see Toshma.
Toshma Behema.
Also, it didn't change. Okay, so bear with me a moment. I'm going to try to bring some. I want to get that. I want to see what An Pedura is, which is Rashi's translation for Achsadam, which the Gemara here says is like a kind of heart failure, I think.
I still love you, doctor.
Hold on, we didn't even get the doctor's position on it, so let's go easy. An Pedura, where is this? Very interesting. Okay, obviously Rashi has a disagreement here with An Pedura here and Fondre. Alan, is this a French word in modern France?
Which one?
And oh, yes, you don't have it on the screen. I'm sorry. Let me try to see.
No, I don't have it.
Hang
I
on, let me
see it. I see it on the screen. It doesn't ring a bell to me.
Oh, now you see it?
Yeah, I see him,
I
but I
don't
see
see it.
Rashi.
Sure.
Hold on. Let me try something.
I can't see it.
All right. All right. I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a moment just so that I can reshare the screen. All right, here we go. So Rashi gave us a word called anpundra. So here, they're English or French, enfandra. Alan, no such word.
No such word.
Okay, but anyways, it's intestinal disease or diarrhea.
But shilshul, we know, right?
Shilshul, we know. We all have a degree on that from a study in brachas. So behema sha'ach sadam. Rabbi Steinsaltz says we're talking about heart congestion, a restriction of blood, because his temperature has risen. Rashi clearly sees it to be more of an intestinal, an infection of the digestive tract. So what do you do if the animal has this illness? On Shabbos, you shouldn't place this animal in water to cool off, because apparently that was part of the problem. Or part of the remedy. The animal's overheated and it's causing its heart to have issues or whatever. Adam shachaz adam. What about a person that has this medical condition? You can place the animal. Make sure to give the person this cooling water therapy. So what do we see here? That an animal that's really bitzar, or an animal that's really sick, you're not allowed to give them the therapy needed, which seems to challenge the assertion of Rav and Shmuel both, which is that you can give an animal therapy when it's in sar, when it's in a lot of pain. Our answers are Ula. Ula says, this remedy is prohibited lest we come to crush herbs in the process of healing. So the Chachamim prohibit this kind of cooling off the animal because we may end up doing process medication. Rashi. Midi direfua. Gazur Rabban. When it comes to matters of healing, not discomfort. So our Gemara essentially is now making an interesting distinction. We'll see if it holds. The distinction between alleviating pain and giving it a therapy, healing. We didn't make this distinction before. Let's hold our horses. Let's see till the end of this thought process. But the Gemara seems to be saying here that we're not going to allow you to heal an animal because you may come to also grind herbs, which is prohibited on Shabbos. Rashi, immediately the refuah goes rabbanan. When it comes to healing, the rabbis prohibit. Why? The isar ishum refuah. If we're going to allow healing the animal, asi lemishri shchika samonim, you're going to end up thinking that you're allowed to also grind up herbs. Who isur deraisa dehavatoichin, and this would be a biblical prohibition. So the Gemara asks your question: Ihachi adam nami. If you're not allowed to heal an animal because we're afraid you'll come to grind, well, a person should have the very same restriction. Why are we distinguishing between animals and people? My answer is no. People go swimming. People go into water, not just for healing, but also for comfort. Adam nira kemekar. It looks like the person is just taking a dip. He's just dunking in the water to cool off. We know people on this shear who occasionally dip in the water. Well, I don't know if it's to cool off or to exercise, but it's not unheard of. It's not necessarily medically related. It's not necessarily healing. So the Gemara says, okay, I accept that, but animals can also go for a swim. Rashi, I'm sorry, the Gemara says, ein maker lebehema. This notion that you see an animal swimming in your pool, you're not going to say the animal's cool enough. You're going to say this animal is there for therapy. Rashi, ein maker lebehema, ein derech lahakar behema. Sorry, let me revise that. It's not common for the owner of an animal to subject the animal, say, hey, you look so hot, let's go for a swim. Maybe animals in the wild will dunk, but if it's a domesticated animal, it's not common that the owner would place the animal in water. If the animal is being dunked, it's for therapy, and people are going to start saying, you're allowed to cure animals. Let's give it Tylenol, and next thing you know, they're going to be sitting with a pestle, compounding new medicines together with our pharmacists, Rabbi Allen and Rabbi Errol.
Put an amulet on it.
Dr. Hammer, go ahead.
I find something an interesting linguistic issue here.
Okay.
Between Gemara Hebrew and modern Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
In modern Hebrew, it's tanein, it's to catch a cold. Here,
Right.
It's to cool off, to get cold. Exactly the same thing, but not that you're getting, not something negative, something positive to cool off.
Interesting. I do want to point out, though, Doctor, that actually it uses a different word.
No,
It's
go back to
tanein.
the beginning. Wait. Go back to the beginning. Go ahead.
Oh, you're right. I stand corrected.
It's tanein.
It's tanein, correct, to cool off.
Means right. Okay.
And in modern era, I stand corrected. In modern Hebrew, it means to get a cold. Very interesting.
Okay. And they're both consistent.
Right,
One
cold.
thing's getting a cold is a bad thing. You're getting sick. The other one is that you're cooling off from the heat. Okay.
It's also interesting that what we call a cold, which some people associate with cold weather, but it's not really a cold. But even in the original Hebrew, it also has that same association. It's stunning, very interesting.
By the way, it's also a good treatment when you have fever to put the baby into cool water.
Yeah. All right, let's do a fast recap. Today was in my opinion, a very interesting discussion. We picked up, followed up extensively in yesterday's discussion about animals. We had a chance to once again consider animal psychology, or the lack thereof, possibly, and the way a human might take seriously an amulet. The professor led us through the interesting discussion about contrasting the scientific method to determine if an amulet was effective versus what today's process might be to determine if any given therapy is actually helpful. And then we jumped into the Gemara, continuing our discussion about the kameya and understanding why we would differentiate between an animal and a human being. The Gemara says we actually aren't really differentiating between the animal and the human being as it comes to halacha. The distinction is that an animal should not wear a human kameya. It's not proven to work, which led us to the question of, so then what makes an animal more strict than a human? And the Gemara said, no, the stringency of an animal over a human is more connected to footwear. When it comes to footwear, humans can wear shoes. Animals should not be wearing their foot gear. And again, we've noted that this is likely not a horse shoe, more like the predecessor of a horseshoe, which was like a metal shoe that could easily fall off. We then asked the question about the general license to give an animal healing to remove pain. It seems from this teaching that you're not allowed to smear and scrape a scab from an animal, even though it's quite painful, and this was considered a therapy. And the Gemara answers, no, we're talking about when the animal is already healed, and so this was just the equivalent of giving the animal some kind of manicure for pleasure, and that is no license. Rashi pointed out that ultimately Rav probably would allow something for Tainug, but we're not intimidated by that because Rav, Tano, Polig, Rav has the status of a sage of the Mishnah and therefore can hold his own even against another Mishnah or a Braita. And then lastly, we spoke about the animal that's not allowed to be cooled off when it's going through this medical condition, although a human can. The reason, the distinction being, an animal, you don't put the animal in the pool to cool off. So if you are, it's probably a therapy. And if it is for some kind of healing, well, then people are going to begin to extrapolate and infer that one is even permitted to give it hardcore medicine, and you can go into the pharmacy on Shabbos and compound for that animal. Maybe I'm probably using the word wrong, compound, but you're allowed to prepare the medicine on Shabbos, and that is not acceptable unless the human is experiencing pekuach nefesh. Then, of course, for a human threat of life, one would be allowed to do so, but otherwise, one is prohibited to do things that appear like healing for that very reason. A human being just to recap, a human being can take a dip, cool off. Animals, if the owners put them in the water, it's for healing. The Gemara is not yet done. We're going to continue this discussion tomorrow. I want to thank you all for joining us today, for all of your
Rabbi,
input.
if you have 1 minute to go back to what you started with Memorial Day, that things are good, I shared with you a terrific vort that I heard. If you look at Hallel, we have a paragraph that ends, Zeh hayom asa Hashem nagila v'nismacha bo. Everything is fantastic. And somebody said, take a look what we say right after. Ono Hashem Oshiano. That when things are so good, we have to be careful and take a look at what we're seeing with young people today.
Yeah. Save us from all of this goodness. Make it better. All right. Thank you all. Let's have a wonderful day. If you're spending some time with family or friends, taking a day off.
Enjoy your holiday, Americans.
Thank you, Canadian.
Canadians, we consider you good allies. I don't know what America or Canada thinks, but we consider you guys good allies.
We're not a threat.
Not yet.
I'm retired. Every day is a holiday.
All right, Shkai, have a wonderful day. We're going to end this link now, and you're more than welcome to rejoin right after the study. Today's Chumash.